Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. Well, we have a timely guest today. She's about to drop her first solo album.
That's right.
That it had a preview the other night, an album party and performance downtown, and it's coming out Friday.
That's right.
The album is called Brouhaha. No, the solo project called Brouhaha, and the album is called
Brouhaha Shaped by Fire.
Shaped by Fire. It's a really interesting project. It's a latest project of an accomplished musician named Maiani Silva, who lives here, works here, but tours all around the world. And she's here to play for us and talk to us today. Maiani, thanks so much for coming in. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, Paul, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So you've had this career. You've done a lot of different kind of things, ensemble, solo. What brought you to put out a solo album with this interesting concept, which is sort of is exploring the Anthropocene through music and science, how anthropology and music explore what it means to be human?
So much there in one question. Let's see. I've always gravitated towards playing music with other people. Even as a young kid, that's the joy. The violin, I liked, but I didn't fall in love with it right away. For me, it was always, at least for the first decade or so, it was a medium. Excuse me. It was a medium through which communication could happen, to connect with people, to be with people.
So communicating with music is kind of a beautiful way to connect with people.
Absolutely.
Because you're not having the misunderstandings of what words mean.
Exactly.
Imperfectly expressing what you're saying. Do you feel like kind of playing music is a perfect expression in a way that human language could ever be, or is that kind of a stretch? Because I guess sometimes when you're trying to express something with music, you don't necessarily fully express the idea that's in your head. But when you connect with people with music, it's such a special thing. It's like staring into their eyes, but their soul.
It's so true. You know, I lived in France for a couple of years, and for most of my time there, I didn't speak French. I struggled quite a bit. I mean, my Portuguese certainly helped with that, but
and just so people know, Maiani was born in Brazil, grew up in LA, and now lives in Hamden.
That's right. Yes, and then there were other things in the middle there, but now I'm here, and you know, living in France, and I played in orchestras in France, and I played chamber music in France, but I didn't understand what the conductors were saying. You know, my stand partner in orchestra would maybe point with his or her bow to the note and be like, "This is where we're starting," you know, and then but the way that the conductor would speak about how they wanted a phrase to be expressed, I understood that. They would sing, they would gesture, and then that just like is the essence of human communication. I didn't understand a word that they were saying, but I understood it when they sang it and when they gestured, and then I could do it.
And we're learning so much about how plants communicate with each other,
Yes.
and other animals
Yes.
besides us, and fungus under the ground.
I know, it's
And I'm
amazing.
just wondering if music is one of those ways that we can break through the limits of our oral communication.
You know, I know, again, I'm not an anthropologist.
But you have a new CD that's all about anthropology.
I know, but I'm still just a musician
Uh-huh.
with an interest, you know, and not being an anthropologist, I guess why I say that is because I don't want to come across like I'm speaking with some kind of authority. I could be making a mistake.
There are stakes because you have this real claim here about anthropology in your
no
CD.
kidding.
Yeah.
But I do want to say that from what I know, I think that what we know about music is that it is, for now, something that it's exclusively human.
Is that true? I thought we've been learning the animals like whales and others do communicate. I guess maybe it
By
sounds
song.
like music to us because the pitch is different, but maybe it's not.
Possibly, yeah, possibly. I mean,
But there's a human kind of music that.
that's right, yeah, because a human is defined. Music is defined as organized sound. But you know, we can stretch that.
I mean, bird calls.
You know, some people.
Well, I guess what I was trying to,
It's
what I was interested in, what you
subjective.
said here, you kind of hadn't thought about that before you came in. So you always played in orchestras, or chamber music with other musicians. Here you decided to do a solo effort, but you did it in this really interesting collaborative way. Just so people know what we're talking about with your
Yeah.
new album, the Brouhaha Solo Project. It's solo when you're playing violin, but you asked, is it 6 composers
That's right.
to write pieces for this album,
Hmm.
and you gave them a very specific charge, which is the way that humans and their environment have a physical world have evolved from fire to, Primitive Fire to Zoom.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of a collaboration.
100%.
So you said before you've always played in groups. Now you decided to go solo. How did it come about that you said, I'm going to do a solo album. I'm doing collaboration. I'm going to do this really interesting topic. How did that come about?
Well, to answer your first question, I think being a contemporary classical musician allowed me to have the courage to do a solo project, because I consider solo music, the CD is the tip of the iceberg. It's a reflection of all of this other. The rest of the iceberg is a composer. It's the collaboration, is workshopping the ideas, it's figuring it out. And that in you hit the nail on the head, Paul. It's collaborative. And that's why I could do it. If this were an album of solo Bach, at least right now in my life, as much as I love that repertoire, that's not for me.
And when you play it solo, how do you make up for the fact that you don't have other instruments to give variation to the listener? Like you're not just listening to one instrument the whole time, when there's going to be a different feel in a song as it progresses, it gets somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's tempo or a shift in like chord structure or whatever. How, as a solo performer, do you step in and add that variation to keep people interested and to bring them somewhere in the course of a piece?
Well, I think when I conceived of the album, I wanted it to be as colorful as possible if it's going to represent humanity and the ecosystem. So I picked composers that had varying styles. I didn't want the sonic experience of the album to sound too similarly. And then I also picked composers that were very curious people, and most of them are my friends. And so I knew that they were curious and they wanted to dig deeper. That being said, I'm not saying that you have to have some kind of intellectual inclination to dig deep into the arts, and these things are not mutually exclusive. But I did want someone to lead with questions, like I like to do.
So how did you get this idea about the environment and humanity and how we evolved together? How did that come in your...
That came into my mind because I have many interests, and it turns out that I was thinking to myself, I really want to make a project that's more than just me playing these pieces. And I have so many interests. How can I connect my two worlds, right? Being a musician, but then interests in all these various fields. And then I realized that most of my interests fell under the umbrella of anthropology. And anthropology, like music, there are many fields within it. So music, you can think of genres of music, you can think of orchestra, you can think of marimba, solo percussion from all over the world. That's all still music, right? So anthropology is similar. There's primatology, there's paleoanthropology, there's evolutionary biology, there's so many things that are in there within that category that I'm fascinated with. And I think being a musician, you have to ask yourself, how do I learn? How can I learn better the instrument or the arts and phrasing, etc. And to learn how one learns, I think made me realize, or to learn how I learned made me realize that people learn in a similar way. And what's that connection like? Why is that? So then I would read books on human behavior that would border with like anthropology, and then I started to watch a lot of David Attenborough. I was like, oh, primates, oh, they're really like us, or I started to get into Jane Goodall or Franz de Waal, a primatologist. I started to really enjoy natural history museums and the human origins exhibits that they have, and being blown away particularly by the Smithsonian Natural History Museum. This was before I moved to New Haven, of course, because the Peabody is amazing. But the Smithsonian Natural History Museum, there's the Human Origins exhibit. They have these columns of varying heights on which they put busts, sculptures of, and the sculptor's name is John Grucci, and he makes this paleo art. So he makes a bust, a head, a sculpture of a Homo erectus or a Neanderthal or other human species. And to be there physically and to stand in front of these columns, and an important detail is that the columns their height is set to the average height of that species, of that human species. And so although it's not the entire person, it's at that height. And so when I'm looking at the eyes of this Neanderthal sculpture, the average male height is the average Homo sapien female height, you know, and I'm looking at his eyes and I'm thinking, my God, this is a person, you know, and or I look at the Homo erectus average height and I look up at her and I think, oh my God, this is not how I learned about evolution at all. I learned it is in this linear thing, and it just blew my mind that many human species, for most, excuse me, let me rephrase that because it's all human. For most of Homo sapien history, we've shared our existence with other human species.
This is interesting. So we're talking to Maiani de Silva. We're talking about an album. She has new music. It drops Friday for a solo project called Brouhaha. But we're talking about how she got this idea of enlisting 6 composers she knows to write pieces for this project for her to perform, to explore how humans and their divine and our origin, our environment developed together, from fire to Zoom meetings. So I'm trying to. This is so interesting. You're saying you go to the museum, you're looking, you're getting your interest in anthropology. You want to try to understand more about the nonlinear evolution of humans. Was there a moment that you could think of when you then said, I'm going to do a project exploring these questions with composers and I'm going to play it alone? Was there a moment like that?
Yeah, I would say I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I wanted to make an excuse to continue to think about it. So I joined.
Well, that's too often with work. You could find a way to tie in your interests of what. So.
Exactly. That's exactly why. I mean, I wanted. You know, I have so many intelligent friends and colleagues, and there's no time in our hustle and bustle lives to sit and have a conversation other than the task at hand. And so to be able to maybe give us an opportunity to just ask a question that.
And how did you phrase the question to these people?
So I would ask the composers to pick a theme of human nature that interests them, that maybe they wanted to learn more about. And then with that theme or question, I would ask, is this exclusive to humans? And then we would find out whether it was exclusive to humans or not.
So you did research with them?
Yes. So it was a combination of, you know, some were interested in speaking to experts, and that was an important part of the project because I find that, you know, there's so much, in the age of information, there's so much noise. There's so much brouhaha out there. and there's also really good stuff. But as lay people, we're not so good at differentiating what's real and what's not, or what's reliable and what's not. And so I wanted an opportunity for us to not only learn about the thing, but to learn how to learn about the thing. So then I would find something and be like, oh no, that's a blog. Oh, maybe that's not trustworthy. It's a blog. I don't know. I mean, maybe it is, but you know, just to engage in critical thinking in a way that is different.
And then to combine that with music was a way to say what they found out. When did this project start?
I would say I really started to dig in 2021, 2022.
When you started working at Yale School of Music?
Yes, so right after that, yeah. But the idea had been forming since
going to Smithsonian and beyond.
Yeah, so 2015.
So can you give me an example of 2 composers by name, what they chose to write about, what you researched, and what they came up with? Yeah,
sure. So the namesake of the album, so this Brouhaha, Shaped by Fire, so that's the first piece of the album by Ian Gottlieb. Ian had already had an interest in anthropology, and so I thought it was perfect. And it was so fun to chat with him. He wanted to do fire.
And he's 2015 grad of Yale School of Music. Is he still there?
No, he is in LA now, and he does very well. He's a great cellist too, as well as a great composer. But so Ian picked fire because, to answer your previous questions about, you know, how did I ask the composers to pick a theme, and then we then talked, are we the only animals? We also then we had one more question, which was, are we the only species to change our environment? And if so, how? Or if not, how? And so Ian, when he picked fire, it was a clear example of how humans have changed the environment for better or for worse, right? We have anthropogenic fires that forests benefit from, or we have natural fires that forests benefit from, or we have fires that are destructive.
So anthropogenic would be created by humans as opposed by nature.
That's right. And so then you have destructive fires, you know, to maybe clear a landscape, to have farming or whatever. And It was really important to me, Paul, that although this project is about the Anthropocene or anthropology, for us to try our best to not have an a view of this in the way that us humans would have. So I didn't want to add judgment to it. I wanted to approach it like the way that scientists approach their research. So I didn't want to say, oh, we're bad and we do X, or oh, we're so good and we do Y. You know, I really wanted it to be, we humans do this in the same way that we can talk about another species doing X or Y.
You know, when you talk, it made me think about it. I always wonder why we differentiate between what humans do to the environment versus other species. Like you said, natural versus anthropogenic, that created it. I wonder, how can you look at the things humans do, even intentionally, that destroy the environment or don't, but just affect it, as one other element of nature, along with what other species do and other forces? I just wonder about that.
Well, I guess I want to also just clarify that when I said anthropogenic versus natural, of course they're both natural, really.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, but it's more that I wanted to just have a distinction between the two.
Because you were looking at humans as specifically and how
Yes.
we've evolved with it.
Exactly.
So what did Ian find out?
So Ian found the research of Jessica Thompson, who's a Yale paleoanthropologist who specializes in fire. I mean, it couldn't be more perfect. And her approach was, she's first of all an incredible scientist. Obviously, I have no authority to say that, but prolific. You know, she travels and does a lot of field work, and she speaks very inspiringly about the topic, I find. And she researches specific areas that there have been fires by Homo sapiens or other human species. And she shared with us the other day at the album release that empirically we can prove that the conversations that these early humans were having around the fire were not literal, you know, I'm gonna do X, or it's not always in the present. It could have been, what did you think of this? Or it could be dreaming, it could be projection. And this is very human, right? It's this ability to think in the abstract.
So you were looking at what kind of conversations took place around fire?
That's right. I mean, that was one thing. And then another thing was she is an expert in fire, in human use of fire. And so she studied, when she does her field research, she can find out, you know, oh, this fire here was a hearth, or this fire here was to clear the land, or this fire here was to provide warmth, and, you know, I mean, for various reasons. And so she is studying how it over time, and I just find it so fascinating. I mean, I want to be honest, I want to like groupie and follow her into Kenya in East Africa and just wear a hard hat and just kind of observe. Have this like.
So what did you and Ian take from that for purposes of applying to original composition?
Well, Ian had read a lot of her work, and then we zoomed. And how Ian did it in his piece was that he employed crackling sounds, and he employed a lot of spinning. You know how sometimes heat spins? You know, I don't, for the latter, I'm not sure if he did that purposefully. I mean, I'm sure he did. He's such a thoughtful composer. But yeah, I also don't want to ascribe a narrative where maybe there isn't one, but it starts in a way that it stops almost immediately as soon as it starts. And then it starts again, and it goes maybe a little further. So it's like that frustration of trying to get the spark going, you know? And then it progresses into something that feels controlled, like a fire that's controlled by us, and then it spins out of control. Because another detail that Jessica researches is, you know, although we have quote-unquote controlled fire, it's not in our full control.
You're from LA.
I'm from
Enough said on that subject. Yeah.
You know, so as much as we would like to think that we have power over that, we don't. And so it's a great piece.
As there's something beautiful in the power that's greater than us that we see in the fire.
Yes, absolutely.
But destructive and beautiful and
100%, which I think just ties into the project as a whole.
So applying those ideas to music, how does that fit in with your goal? Is the goal greater understanding of us and our environment and our origins, or is it just communicating, feeling, experiencing, understanding a phenomenon without words?
I think all of the above. think I use the music as a medium through which to communicate all of that. And music is abstract, it's not literal. And so I understand that a lot of the nuance of the project is going to be confusing, especially to musicians, I think. I think non-musicians have an easier time not being so literal about it. But
if only people were curious about everything in life, or curiosity is great. Thanks for that comment. I agree.
Oh, that's so kind. Thank you. But I first and foremost, this album is a musical project. I'm not, reading papers with music in the background. It's not
You're not
literal.
lecturing.
I'm not lecturing.
What are you doing instead of lecturing?
I'm trying to create an opportunity to ask questions. And for musicians and for the average scientific layperson to be okay with nuance and to be okay with unanswered questions. Because I think we really struggle with that, myself included, right?
We can be comfortable with the idea that we don't have any answer. We don't control everything,
Yeah.
including the fire.
Exactly.
So what happened? He's a cellist. I'm assuming he wrote it on cello.
Yeah. So he's
How did that change when you had to play this piece on violin?
not very much. A few very minor details, but because he does write for strings often, violin and viola.
I've always wondered about that, given that each of those has a different role. Like, I was thinking violin more of like the voice singing. I think the cello sort of in the gut. Maybe that's ridiculous,
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of centering, but not quite like the bass. That's more of a percussion instrument.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, I think they can be all of those roles.
So what changed when you played this on violin compared to? Oh, you said not much.
Not much. I mean, really minor idiomatic things that relates to the instrument and how to approach it.
By idiomatic, sort of the way you'll play a short note, or if he's doing the swirls or something like that.
Yeah, so like things like molto flautando, which it's in a musical Italian term that means to really be to put the bow in a specific place that gives it a blurry kind of sound. And on the violin, maybe I needed to be extra than I would be on the cello. And so what's fun about working with—
Is that because the strings are thicker in the bow with the cello?
I don't know. It could also be the fact. It could also be my instrument. Maybe another violin would need that too. So that's what's so fun about working with other people, is that you're kind of figuring it out together.
And I must have been so excited that you gave these people the challenge. They came up with something original just for you, and then they handed it off for you to bring it home and have us hear it.
Yeah,
which is what you're going to do now, right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. You've been listening to Maiani de Silva. She lives here, but she grew up and lived other places, gone around the world, a successful musician. And she's going to play us a number now, if that's okay, that we were just talking about, Shaped by Fire, by Ian Gottlieb. That's on her new album, on her solo project, Brouhaha. And she's going to, it's the title song, it's the single. There are singles in classical music?
There are now.
The single from the newly dropped tomorrow album, Shaped by Fire, here on WNHH FM. Wow. Okay. Shaped by Fire. There's Maiani de Silva. That's the title track on her newly about to drop CD, Shaped by Fire, with her first project of her solo project, Brouhaha. She's playing it here on Dateline New Haven and WNHH FM. That was beautiful.
Thank you so much.
You want to bring the microphone back to you there?
Yes, thank you for the reminder.
But that was so interesting to watch it. The first thing I was thinking was, do you feel like playing the violin, maybe in a piece like that, is a form of creating fire? Like I was thinking about the bow, and it's almost like the flint, and then you're kind of snapping the strings.
Yeah, I mean, this is an organic object that's very sensitive to weather,
And you're creating a spark.
and I'm creating a spark.
I don't know. I was just thinking that partly. I was also thinking about, so you had, just to recap, you had 6 composers. You challenged them to write about the connection between music, science, human development, and our environment, all the way from fire to Zoom. You're playing them on violin on your new album, Solo. And we talked about being solo. So one thing I was wondering, you had to capture a lot of sounds, kind of different kinds of sounds there. And there are times you were like bowing and plucking at the same time. There were times when you were quickly moving back from the lower strings to sort of anchoring it, and the higher strings when you were taking us someplace. If that were written, I was imagining this also as a chamber. You've played in a chamber sextet called the Eighth Blackbird.
That's right.
You've also played with orchestras. Would you have done all that in a violin if that were if this were written for that sextet, or would you have been broken out to just perform one of those functions, and other instruments like the cello or the bass would have been playing those lower notes? Or would you have been plucking while somebody else is bowing?
Yeah, that's kind of the art of arranging, or instrumentation, that composers and arrangers face. Is, when somebody goes, oh, I want to play this song or piece, but can you arrange it for this iteration, for this trio, or for this sextet? Then the arranger or composer has I think, the challenge, but also joy of figuring out which one of these elements stands out the best in any given instrument, to bring out the piece itself. Because ultimately, it's about the piece of music, right? And different instruments have different, what we in music call color, not literal color, but it's like a different timbres of sound that are expressive. The violin isn't always rich. It can be gentle and tender, and it can be forceful, and it can be harsh. So we try to lead with adjectives and characters and moods that can then achieve a feeling, and the rest is just technique you use to figure that out.
I'm just thinking of Layla by Eric Clapton, Derek Dominoes. So you had this sort of powerful, dramatic version that was the hit with Derek and Dominoes. Then he released his solo album, The Unplugged, where it kind of had a kind of shuffle feel.
I only know the unplugged version.
Oh, okay, because we heard that all in contrast. That's what made it so new, and kind of ushered that unplugged idea into more popular consciousness, the way the actual music changed. So when I was asking you before, he would not try to replicate what the piano did and the bass and everything. He actually turned it into a shuffle when it was kind of dramatic pop song.
Well, sometimes people are moved to approach it in a different way, like covers. Sometimes a
good cover reinterprets it and claims
exactly, and not tries to sound like the original. I mean, that's the
So, Maiani, how'd you get into this? You were born in Brazil. You're growing up in South Central LA. At 8 years old, you started playing with a teacher named Ms. Carol Dobbs. You said earlier in the show that you didn't immediately go into music because the music was more connection. Tell me about
it was
how
more
you got into
violin. So violin was there's a nuance there that I really want to be careful with. I didn't dislike the violin when I was a kid. It is really hard.
It is so hard.
String instruments are hard because
Especially
everyone
the
sounds
violin.
like crap at first. Everyone. No one is born being able
And
to
violins,
sound good.
you danger sounded squeaky. With the cello, you kind of little room there, right?
I mean, maybe, but they also sound squeaky,
Yeah.
And so I think I liked the fact that my favorite part of playing the violin at home, or rather when I was a kid, was not practicing at home. It was playing it at school with other kids.
And how'd you get started with that? How'd you get up with Miss Carol
Public
Dowd?
school, Hillcrest Magnet Elementary.
And you were handed a violin?
I was.
Whoa, a
And
little fateful choice by someone else for your life.
Well, actually, I wanted the flute. I wanted to play the flute, and they didn't have any at the time.
Huh.
And so then they were like, "Do you have a backup, wish?" And then I said, "Well, my older sister plays the violin. Maybe I'll just play." I looked up to her. Maybe I'll just try the violin. And so that's how it started,
And it took.
And I have never stopped.
Do you remember a point at which you say, "This is my thing"?
I think it was high school. I went to an arts high school. It was a public school, but in LA, I tell everyone that school was like fame.
Mhm.
You remember fame?
We have a little version of that here with Educational Center for
Oh,
the
you
Arts,
do? Oh, that's
ECA on
fantastic.
Audubon Street. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. That changed my life.
Tell me about that.
Well, I went from junior high, which was a great school as well, but probably a little more academic, LACES, which is Los Angeles Center for Enriched Studies. And although there was an incredible teacher there, Mark Monarch, who supported me so much, I was still the strongest player in the school. And no one, that's boring. You need to be challenged. And I think even as a early teen, I knew that. I knew that I wasn't the best or even great. I was just maybe the best relative to others. And so then when I went to Hamilton, I was no longer concertmaster of the orchestra. I was in the back of the second violins. And I really leaned into that, and I really was
You
grateful
like a
for
challenge,
it.
part of your curiosity.
Exactly. And then also I really liked that I was surrounded by other teens in high school who were as passionate about music as I was. So then I felt like,
You found your tribe.
yeah, I found my tribe. And so then when I went to conservatory, I felt that psychologically I was ready.
Where'd you go?
I went to Boston Conservatory. But in high school I took AP Music Theory. This isn't a public school. I mean, it's fantastic. I took music history. I was in string ensemble orchestra. I was in a mariachi band. I got to play in pits for musicals. I got all of this like kind of quote unquote gig experience as a
Wow.
teenager, and then
Wow.
I found my tribe, and I thought this is it. This is where I belong.
Well, it's wonderful.
Thank
And then how
you.
did that evolve into a career from going to Boston?
Oh man, it was really hard. I did a lot of freelance work in Boston, a lot of playing in different orchestras to make ends meet because I really wanted to just focus on music. And a big learning. There were a couple times where I was like, "Is this for me?" Because the violin was something that brought me so much joy, and but also so much heartache, because it can be debilitating to always strive for a goalpost that's never in the same place, or it can be debilitating to think, "Oh, what's so and so going to think of this?" or "What's so and so is going to think of that." So although I think that those are beautiful things that we can use to make progress, and we need those challenges, I think sometimes they can feel debilitating, especially if you're incredibly self-conscious.
When did it get the point that you say, "I'm going to be able to do this for a living"?
I wasn't until, I don't know, my 30s sometime, mid-30s. I'm 41 now. Yeah.
But now you've gone around the world, right, Tori?
Yeah.
And then when you became a lecturer at Yale School of Music, professor?
Yes, so technically I teach in the Department of Music, which is amazing, and then I have YSM students. I have Yale School of Music students as well, so I do teach both. And yeah, it's an incredible place to work. And
Did you use the phrase earlier, contemporary classical, or is that my imagination?
No, I did use that.
Tell me what that means.
Well, classical in the sense of tradition, this is notated Western notation, but contemporary in that you look at it and you go, it's Western, but there's some things in here that are different. And I find that so exciting because if you think of all the other eras of music, they were the present day at their moments. Right. And so they were pushing the boundaries and everything. And so I like to be a part of that culture. I like to be a part of the culture of now, and to not know what is going to survive the test of time. I find that exciting.
And you got this new album that's really thrown out there to the world. Friday is dropping. Shaped by Fire, solo project by Maiani, Silva.
Thank you.
Where you're exploring how people have evolved with their environment from fire to Zoom meetings. So it's so fun to learn about that. What's your next project?
I don't know. I kind of, in passing, said to my husband the other day, made some reference to Brouhaha 2.0, and he was like, "I can't talk to you right now because it's been years in the making, and and I'm very grateful. He's been
Well,
incredibly
congratulations.
supportive. Thank
That's such an
you.
interesting project.
Thank you.
Where can
Yeah.
people get this? Should they just Google Shape by
They
Fire?
can Google Shape by Fire, Brouhaha : Shape by Fire. They can go to Bandcamp. They can go to Apple Music, Spotify, but Spotify will be as of Friday. But right now you can listen to the single Shaped by Fire on Apple Music.
And right now you can listen to A Little Time,
Yes.
another track that we have here that you're probably going to continue here on WNHH. And we're going to listen to that as we take it out. So thank you so much, Maiani, for coming on
Thank you so
Dateline New
much.
Haven. Good luck with the album.
Thank you, Paul.
I hope it goes far and wide and helps us understand and connect to our environment and who we are in a new, fresh way.
Thank you very much.
And thanks to Harry Droz, as always, behind the controls. And so just stay tight, listen with us, and journey with us all through the weekend long at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.